Sulam, the ladder, is the meaning of tefillah. This meeting is being the ladder is the meaning of tefillah, and through the tefillah, we're making the connection between the neshama that's in the body with the source, the neshama that's l'maylo. However, providing that the ladder is standing on the earth, on the arts. So this ice is going into what is the meaning of arts. Before he explained it in a ruchnistic way, which is arts, the spirit of malchus, and he explained why it has to go through malchus, because that's where the neshama came from, through malchus. It goes up through malchus, and now he's explaining it in avodah. In avodah, it means malchus is the meaning of humility, of anova and shiftless. Thank you very much. And what does it mean? That it means that the davening has to be standing on the ground, meaning really all the inyanim of avodas Hashem have to begin with aretz. And aretz is bittul. In order to explain this better, he goes into what is the clip of Amalek. And Amalek is the first nation that attacked us chronologically. After going out of Mitzrayim, all the nations in the world were paralyzed with fear. Amalek was the one that broke the ice. And after he attacked us, other nations felt that they can attack us. What does it mean, Baruchni, is that Amalek is the first thing that this led to all the other nations attacking. On a personal level, means Amalek is such a klippa that this is what allows all the other klippas to come in to power to a person. What is the klippa of Amalek? In of gaiva, yeshus, and arrogance. So we'll start again, we'll back up a little bit, start again from the line that ends with the word hine. "11 lines from the bottom, the last word on the line is hine. The lachain, and therefore, hine, aklip is Amalek, your ratios are going. After explaining that Amalek is about Yeshus, we can understand how Amalek is the first umakar and the source, the Zayin umis to the other nations. Zayin umis, the other 7 nations, and Zayin midas rois. That's the union of the 7 negative character traits, like we just had in Tanya. The way Hashem created Klippa is that it is a reflection of Kedusha. It looks the same like in Kedusha. And therefore, Yesh Midas the Kedusha, just like there are Midas in Kedusha, Chesed, Gevura, and everything else, which is Abba and Yira Lekis. In the same way, Yesh Midas the L'umazeh. There's all sorts of emotions, and these are emotions that are related to Klippa. But generally speaking, there are 7 emotions. There are 7 categories of emotions. In order to make it simpler for us to follow, so we're saying that even the 7 would also be divided into 2 categories, Chesed and Gevura. But just like in Kedusha, Chesed is love for Hashem, and Yira is fear and awe of Hashem. The Chesed L'umazeh, Chesed of Klippa is in Ave Zoris, foreign feelings of love to things that are foreign to a Yid. Having and having passion for physical and materialistic pleasures. Because so it's passion, it's love, but it's the wrong place. Gvura is an attribute which is not chesed, but gvura. How is it in klipa? In kas. A person who is angry, that's an attribute, that's kas, that's gvura. Or a tziche, or a person who's driven God to kill somebody, that's gvura. Then there's teves, which is his spoilers. It doesn't go into the detail, but in klipa it would mean pride, boasting of who I am and what I am. Amalek, so it's interesting. Amalek is considered a very destructive klipa, a very destructive attribute, character trait. But yet Amalek is not one of the seven. The 7 nations are supposed to include all the 7 different kinds of negative character traits. So how come Amalek is not one of them? It's Kanani, Chiti, Ameri, Prizi, Wusi. So the answer is the reason why Amalek is not one of them is not because Amalek is not as important, or is not as significant, doesn't really count, or is just part of something else. Just the opposite. Because Amalek is the source for all 7. That's where they all come from. We can see this explicitly. We can see this in daily life. Mishu Menusa, a person who is an arrogant person, it means he always feels a sense of importance about himself. He feels that he's very dear and very important in his own eyes. So as a result of that, anything that's, let's say, something that's good and sweet, something that's pleasurable, he wants it. If it's pleasurable, then he wants it. There's no such concept that maybe this is not for me. Who says I have to have everything? Because he feels so important, then if this is available, I should have it. That's number one. Remember we said yesterday, there's 2 things. Number one is that there's some people that sometimes they get excited and they're drawn to something, and sometimes not. This is a person that anything and everything that he hears about, that anything that is pleasurable out there, he feels that he must have it. That's number one. The second thing is, he doesn't rest, he doesn't calm down until he gets what he wants. In other words, he won't accept that he can't fulfill his desire, his lust, whatever it is that he has. That's a person who's arrogant. Hashem came in Shuvah but a person who's a humble person. He doesn't look at himself that he's someone who's very important and he's above the rest and he's stands out. He doesn't have that desire for these good things. Like it doesn't even dawn on him that this is something that he should have. Gives an example that we all know that kings, their level, the food that they have, the food that they enjoy is not what ordinary people enjoy. So you can imagine sometimes there are people that are around the royal family, whether it's the ministers or princes or people who see this and they're there, they might get a thought like, I wish I could also have this kind of a meal. But a person who's a poor person, who hardly has a meal that's just a regular meal for regular food, he doesn't even have this desire because it's like a different caliber. It's not my caliber. This is for people that are on a much higher place. He's not in that place that he should want these kind of things because he feels this is out of my ballpark. This is for people that are at a different status. So the person who's a Balgaiva, a person who's an arrogant person, doesn't think that way because he is status. So therefore, he, like I said yesterday, he feels a sense of entitlement. If anyone should get it, it should be me. But the humble person doesn't feel that this is something which he could expect to have. It doesn't belong to his caliber of people, it belongs to a caliber of people that are much greater. And there's another thing about this humble person. Because he's humble, he can accept that I won't get what I want. Okay, so I can't have it. He can come to terms with it. An arrogant person can't come to terms with the idea that he can't have what he wants. How could it be that I won't get what I want? And therefore he'll do everything and anything and not stop until he'll get what he wants. The person who is an arrogant person, anything he hears about, he has a desire like he should also have it. And the second thing is, he won't stop, he won't let go of it until he's able to fulfill his taiva, like with the example we gave yesterday from the Gemara, that he became physically sick because he couldn't fulfill the taiva, the lust that he had. That's number one. So here we see that the love to the negative comes from the need of yeshus, from Amalek. The desire for the things that he wants and the love for the things that he wants could be so strong, so intense. A person, because he has a desire for something and the desire is so strong, so even if it turns out that this is something which is asur, according to Torah, it's clearly halachically something he's not allowed to have or not allowed to do. Nevertheless, because he has such a strong desire for it, he will violate Torah to get what he wants. And not necessarily because he doesn't care about Torah, but the intensity of the desire will distort his judgment, his way of thinking, that it'll make sense to him that in this case it's okay. Let's look at another line. We'll find what we call a heter, that under these circumstances, it's okay. Now the heter that he's going to find is distorted. It's not really accurate. He's really comparing it to the wrong thing. But when you want something very much, things make sense to you because you want it to make sense. So number one, he'll find the heter. And number two, another thing's happened. As a result of the fact that his desire is so strong and so intense, the Isur is not so huge in his eyes. Like, okay, so if I violate, it's not the end of the world. We know that people have this attitude regarding different areas in Torah, like, okay, eating on Yom Kippur, wow, that's out of the question. Eating chametz on Pesach, who would even think about that? Then there's certain things, even in Torah mitzvahs, that people sort of don't feel like this is such a big deal. Yes or no? It's not going to make it or break it. There's an expression in Gemara, Rashi brings it on Chumash. There's a pasuk in Chumash, V'haya Ekev Tishmon. In fact, it's the name of a parsha, Ekev. So when it says there that there are certain mitzvahs, Sha'adam Dosh Ba'Kevav, certain mitzvahs, people step on it with their heels. In other words, there's certain mitzvahs that people are like, no way. And certain mitzvahs that people just don't realize. When you look at certain svarim, whether it's svarim of Musar, svarim of Chassidus, let's say something like talking in the middle of davening, or talking in the middle of reading the Torah. What they write is very scary. And it's something which is really very serious. And yet we find that people who are in all other areas of Torah mitzvahs, they're pretty much observant and they do things right. In this area, they just, as we call it, they trample on it, they step on it, like it's not such a big deal. So this is what happens over here. It's an area where it's actually usur. It is a big deal. And normally this person would consider it a big deal, but because they have such a desire for this food, or such a desire for this relationship, or such a desire for this money, that the Isur suddenly becomes smaller in his eyes. He doesn't see it as such a big, terrible thing. Maybe, Sheikha, this is similar, the same principle behind Sheikha. We know that one of the Averis in the Torah is that a judge is not allowed to take bribe. Why? Of course, the reason, because but in the Torah there's a reason given. Ki hasheichad ya'aver einei chachamim. It says sheichad will blind the eyes of the wise. Whenever the Rebbe would talk about the subject, you always add, it doesn't say that the sheichad will influence a foolish person. It says it'll blind the eyes of a wise person, which means the Torah testifies that according to Torah standards, this person is really a true chacham. And yet, once he takes sheichad, he can no longer trust his own judgment. It doesn't mean that when you take sheichad, I know in my head that this person is really liable, he has to pay. I'm the judge. So he tells him that he's exempt from paying. Why? Because this person gave me a gift, and because he gave me a gift, I want to make the ruling in his favor. That's not what it means. And that's why the laws of sheichad applies to everyone and anyone. In Gemara, there's a section in Gemara, the Gemara gives a list of stories of the greatest Tanoim, Amoraim, how they disqualify themselves to be judges because of sheichad. And when you see the sheichad, you realize to what extent this has an effect on a person. So, for example, one of the stories that I remember was two stories. One story was that one of the Tanaim was supposed to be a dayan, a judge of a certain case, and he had to come from someplace else. He came with a boat. When you get off a boat, the boat is rocky because of the water. So someone stretched out his hand and helped him get off the boat onto the shore. Next day he walks into the Bezdin, and guess who's the person that he has to judge is this person that helped him off the boat. He says, sorry, I have to disqualify myself. He did me a favor yesterday, so I'm not qualified to do this. So what are we suspecting? That one of the Tanoim, Amoraim, is going to chas v'shalom give a false ruling against Torah in a Bezdin, and it's going to be because all he did was stick out his hand and help him from the boat to the shore? So the answer is, that's not what we're afraid of. Kavana is, Ayidei Kir Vadas, because something happened, he gave me a gift. He did something which created a certain closeness. Nasa hatoya sichlis. It has a certain effect on my thought process that now it's inclined mata mederech emes. It sort of leans to a different direction. And it appears to me that the person is innocent, even though really he's guilty. I'm sure that everyone in this room at least once had the opportunity and the schus to have a conversation with someone that wasn't making sense. And they're arguing about their point, and you're trying to talk, but don't you understand? And they're arguing. And the reason why they're arguing is because to them it makes sense. But very often, why does it make sense to them? Because they want it to make sense. They have a desire for this. They want to do things a certain way. They want to acquire something. And because they want it to make sense, that has an effect that my seichel is no longer pure and objective. There's something that's pushing the logic in that direction. Again, we're not talking about a decision to be made whether 2 + 2 = 4 or 2 + 2 = 93. That would be simple. 2 + 2 = 4. I can prove it. Every decision, especially in a courtroom, is always something more subtle. You know, do I look at it this way? Do I look at it that way? Just like when we have to make decisions, there's pros and cons. So what's more important, this or that? Let me ask you a different question. B'chlal, how does a person make a decision? A lot of people don't even know. How do you make a decision? I have pros and cons. I have a reason for this, I have a reason for that. How do I at the end make a decision? I mean, if I do research and I find it says in Shulchan Aruch, this is right. A chassid doesn't know what to do. He looks up in a maimer, a sicha, Igros Kodesh, the Rebbe says, this is the way to do it. Okay. But we're not talking about these kind of things that are black and white. We're talking about gray area. I have to make a decision. Should I go study in this yeshiva, study in that yeshiva? Should I take this job? Should I take that job? All these decisions. And I see good reasons for positive here, and I see reasons for there. How do I, at the end, make a decision? What's the process?
What is better? You think what's better for you?
Yeah, but I think this is better than I think this is better. What?
Meditate.
Meditate.
Back to the inner.
You guys are too good friends. You have too much to say.
You're asking everyone how they make a decision. Everyone's different how they make a decision.
Your friends can end up telling you opposite things.
Yeah.
I remember once seeing an article. It was about an article for a mother who had her first baby. And she speaks to her neighbor who says, you know, it's very good to let the baby cry. It clears out the lungs. And then she has the baker who she goes to buy bakery stuff says that be very careful. Don't let the baby cry a lot because you know what it can do to the kishkis here. You have to be very careful. One of them says that, you know, don't diaper the baby too often. Then the skin becomes extremely sensitive. Another one says, no, don't let that happen. So the title of the article was Advice, How to Handle Advice. You're getting advice from different people, and everybody says the opposite, and everybody tells you that what they're telling is right. But really what I'm asking now is not for a technique or how do I go outside of myself. Within myself, how do people make decisions? Like for example, in Gemara, there's Beshama and Beis Hillel. Beshama and Beis Hillel, these were Tanoim, the greatest time that ever lived. So Beshama had a reason. It was very, very, very deep, not simple. So when I learned the Gemara and I understand it, if I understand it, I know this is not what Beshama was thinking. It was much deeper than that. If I understand it, it couldn't be what he was thinking. Much, much deeper than that. And Beis Hillel was much deeper. So that means that in reality, in truth, there's a deep, deep reason to think Beis Shammai's way, and there's a deep, deep reason to think Beis Hillel's way. So how did Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel make their decision? Beis Shammai certainly understood that there's another way of looking at it, and Beis Hillel understood there's another way of looking at it. So what is the mechanism in the brain, so to speak, that makes the decision? I don't know if I can tell you because what? Pleasure.
Versus,
Getting close.
versus like the negative.
But I see positive and negative in both.
It has to be which
The
one is
truth has to
more.
your nature, your own nature.
Which one is bigger? Is it there more to gain or there's more to lose?
You eventually get to a place where like the truth clicks and like that's the answer.
But I guess both of them look at it, one says there's more to gain this way, and in a certain way there's more to gain here, in a certain way there's more to gain there. I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example in Gemara. And by the way, any machlekes in Gemara, any decision, any of the two opinions in Gemara is based on deep, deep reasoning from one way and the other. It's not just stam. So let's say in Gemara there's a story where there was one of the sages that he was the head of the yeshiva, the head of the community, and for a certain reason they removed him and put someone else in his place. And after they removed him, they changed one of his rules. His rule was that in order to go into the yeshiva, you had to pay a certain amount of money because he felt that if a person is not ready to pay, that means they're not so committed, and therefore will only take people that are really deeply committed. When the new person came into this position of power, what happened was the Gemara said they had to add 400 more benches in the yeshiva. That's how many more students joined. And when he saw that, he was very broken because it means I denied so many hundreds of people from learning Torah. Then he had a dream, and in the dream they showed him that even though these are so much more people, but they don't have really that depth, that content, that deep, true dedication and so on. So the way it's explained is that the difference of opinion between the two of them was, what's more important, quality or quantity? In other words, it's understood that if you do it this way, you'll get more students, but not such quality students. So one opinion was it's better to have more quality than quantity. It's less, but at least they're more quality. And the other opinion was, no, it's better to have more talmidim in numbers, even though it's less in quality. So that's why you have these two ways of looking at it. How in the world do I make a decision? I look at this way, this makes sense. I turn around, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let me look here. Yes, this makes sense. Go back and forth. How do you ever, what does it mean to make a decision? So it must mean, of course, this is one of the things that most people struggle with, making decisions, some more than others. But in Chassidus it says that to make a decision comes from a certain part of the brain, and that is the part of the brain that's called das. Das is the decision-making mechanism in the brain that helps the person make a decision.
So can I ask you a funny question?
Not yet, because I didn't even start explaining it yet. Let me first explain, then we'll get to the funny question. We need some simcha, yeah. So, what does it mean, the das? Das means to feel. We had it in the Maimon that we learned in the Kuti Torah. In other words, when there's two ways of looking at things, in Beis Shammai's brain, the way he thought about it, this way of looking at it made more sense to him than the other way. It just registered in his head that this seems to be more right. And the other person, that seems to be more right. In other words, he didn't have doubts. He had the question this way, that way, thought about it very deeply, went through all the pros and cons, but at the end, it made sense to him that this just seems to be the right way of looking at things. And the other person, to him, it makes sense differently because people look at things in different ways. But in this case, it's a purely intellectual process. I think one way, you think another way. But if you give me money or you have another benefit out of it, and then I say to myself, this makes more sense. The question is, does it make more sense because intellectually it makes more sense? Or because I have a certain benefit, that's why this registers more than the other side.
It changes the chemicals.
It changes the chemical. You want to talk in scientific terms, yeah. Do you follow me? So in other words, if a person is having a hard time making a decision, that means he has a DAS deficiency. You have to go get a vitamin that's a DAS vitamin, and that'll help us. But the DAS means that this, I feel this more than the other. This just feels more right than the other in my brain. And therefore I feel very certain and very clear that this is the right way to go. And it has to do, of course, with who the person is and their nature and the way they think. Beshama was Gevura, Beisel was Chesed, so it's a different way of perceiving things. But nevertheless, as a result of that, the logical process in his person had led him to the conclusion that this makes more sense. So the way of making a decision is what makes more sense, what registers in my head stronger than the other. So if there's a personal benefit involved, I can no longer trust that it's the intellectually makes more sense. It could be external matters, external things that influence the way my brain is working. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
I have a few questions, but this is like a little off the point, but they say that people born in October are very indecisive. They can't make decisions, and they just need help with outside people to help them like decide. Tishrei, Libra. It's true.
It says this in Torah.
That was so funny. I have no clue.
Oh, sorry, I don't know.
Also, sometimes like people who've been through trauma, they it's a trauma-based effect that they can't make decisions. Like they can't decide. So
That means that there are certain emotional issues that are interfering with the process, with the intellectual process.
So it interferes with us.
Right. So this is called hatoya sichlis, which means the seichel is leaning in a certain direction. Shemata miderech ha'emes, the seichel leans in a direction which is deviating from the emes. So in his mind, it appears as if he feels this makes more sense, but doesn't realize why it makes any sense. So just like it works this way when it comes to making a decision. And the same thing as every person when he wants something. And the desire is not just a regular desire, but a very strong, intense desire. As a result of that, it appears to him, it makes sense to him, it's not so terrible. And he'll find the hero's heter. And sometimes you ask somebody, I see you eating this, are you sure that it's kosher? Yeah, I heard from my mother's cousin that her grandmother told her that her great-grandmother used to eat it, okay? Are you sure about all the details, what, when, where, how? But sometimes when you want something very much, you just rely on a little something, good enough. So what led to this? That first of all, he had taiva. Second of all, the teves is so strong that he can't come to terms with not having it. Third of all, it leads me to doing things in a way that are not so kosher 100% because I want it so much. What led to this? It all came from his nasos. That he perceives himself as a very important person, as someone with importance and prominence. That's how he perceives himself. Because of that, he has the strong desire. It could allow him ultimately to stumble and even violate something which is clearly usher in the Torah. In other words, you say you have a strong desire, it's not an avera, just not a good thing. But ultimately it can lead to actually violating Torah and doing an avera. And certainly this could lead a person in that direction when it comes to things that are permissible. He does what his heart wants. We know that in Chassidus, this is a very big thing, that of course things that are prohibited, but according to Chassidus, and even we'll soon see that there's an opinion in halacha that for a person to just do things for the purpose of fulfilling my desire and passion in itself, that is something which is prohibited. It says kadesh atzmecha b'mutalach, which means sanctify yourself even with things that are permissible. According to some opinions, it's something which is from the Torah, because it says Vizkadishtem, you should be holy, v'yisim gedoshim. So the Gemara says that this means Kadesh atzmocha b'mutalach, to be holy and not to violate Torah. It already says in the Torah. So what is the Torah adding here? And the Torah is adding, you should be holy means even sanctify yourself with things that are permissible. Chassidus Rabbi Majeski writes about this in Tanya in chapter Chavtes, that even something which is permissible, a person should be able to discipline himself and not have this thing that whatever it is that I want, it's okay to go after it and get it. Generally speaking, the reason for this would be that if I condition myself with permissible things, that if I want it, I have to get it, eventually I'll get to a place that I'll also want something which is not permissible. And by now, I've already created this habit, or I've conditioned myself that I can't come to terms with things that I want. I must get it. Then when something usher comes along, I'll feel that I have to get that too. And I won't be able to stop myself. That's a simple reason. According to Chassidus, there's really a deeper reason. And the deeper reason is that being that we learn, what according to Chassidus, the definition of klipa is, very different than the definition of impurity or evil according to Nigla. According to Nigla, if it's against Torah, that's something which is no good. But something which is not against Torah, a par of innocent apple, nothing wrong with this apple. Par of innocent, look at the stable, nice, quiet, doesn't bother anybody. According to Chassidus, this is a klipa. Klipa? What did poor guy do? Nothing, he's not bothering anybody. Occupying a little bit of space. And the answer is, because klipa doesn't mean evil. Klipa doesn't mean bad. Klipa means something which covers up ungodliness. That's the definition of klipa.
That's what?
It covers up ungodliness. You don't see Hashem. Really, this exists only because of Hashem. There's a Dvar Hashem that is constantly sustaining this table. Without that, it couldn't exist. So really, the true essence of what this is Hashem. Hashem is giving it energy. I don't see it. I see this as something separate from Hashem. When you perceive anything separate from Hashem, that's an Indian of Klipa. So if a person has passions that are separate from Hashem, that itself is Klipa.
So it's not an avera, but it's like
No, so it's something which is, in a spiritual sense, this is disconnecting from Hashem. Halachically, there are certain opinions that say, because of this reason, that therefore it's something which is also.
So it's an avera or great. Free other area.
What?
It's gray, it's a gray area.
And I'm just telling you, there's some opinions that say it's a various. Some people say that it's like you say, it's pre. But I want to explain that what about people that are just living a normal life? They do exercise, they eat food, they buy nice clothing. So the truth is, to a certain extent, it is possible. I'm not saying that we have to convince ourselves we're big tzaddikim, but it's possible that ultimately, whatever I'm doing to be happy, to be calm, to be feeling good about myself, in order to be able to serve Hashem better. There's a famous story, it's printed in the back of the Tillim, that the Rebbe Marash wanted to prove a certain point to his two children. It was the Rebbe Rashab when he was a child and his brother. And he wanted to show him the difference between a simple Jew and a Jew that's not a simple Jew. I know, and someone who's also a simple non-Jew. A Jew that learns Torah and is on a certain level, you understand the difference. But what about the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew? They're both very simple. So he called in a non-Jew who used to work for him, and he spoke a fluent Yiddish like any other Jew. And he asked him, I asked him a question. Did you eat today? He said, yeah. Did you eat good? Yeah. And I said, why did you eat? So I should live. And why do you live? This is again a simple, you would say like a peasant. I live so I can have good vodka and another something else to eat along with it. Okay. Then he called in a simple Jew, which also worked for the Rebbe. And he said, did you eat today? He said, yeah. Did you eat good? He said, Baruch Hashem, I'm satisfied. I'm not hungry. Then he says to him, why did you eat? I ate. I want to live. And why do you want to live? He said, I want to live because I want to serve Hashem. And he gave a deep sigh, which meant like, I wish I would live up to that. So in other words, generally speaking, really the average Jew, sof kol sof, if you're really conscious of Yiddishkeit and Hashem and Torah mitzvahs, we are basically doing everything we do for that purpose. So a person, even if a person's eating food that's not like, I don't need this to sustain myself. I can be alive without eating this. But if it's something that I eat that makes me more relaxed and gives me a feeling of pleasure, as a result of that, I'm in a better place and I could serve Hashem better. Ultimately, it's all for serving Hashem. You know, they say that food sometimes could be a soother. Person's like not in a very good mood. Then they sit down and eat something which they enjoy. It calms them down, makes them feel more relaxed, puts them into a better place. So if a person does that, it's like a food that has good taste, but the effect it has, and that's why a lot of the times when people learn Tanya, we spoke about this before, but I don't think we can speak about it enough. They learn Tanya, and you read something like this, oh, it's klipa, so I better be careful what I eat. And I'm not going to buy food that I like. I'm not going to buy clothing that I like. I'm not going to do this. Eventually, they're doing more harm than good because they're denying themselves things that make them feel more relaxed, that make them feel more better. When you do these things, and as a result of that, you're in a better place emotionally, you can serve Hashem better, ultimately. So ultimately, it's all about serving Hashem. But if it would be really totally disconnected from that, and I'm just passionate about the physical pleasure, and that we do see when a person indulges more than they really need to, then it's really separating from Hashem. That means there's other passions in this world that are not connected to Hashem. So even a person who's doing exercise, even a person who's into sports, but he's into sports because that to him is relaxing, and that's something which makes him feel better about himself, and he could go ahead and daven and learn and do mitzvahs better. It could also be part of a way of serving Hashem. But if someone has a passion for something that has totally nothing to do with Yiddishkeit or Hashem, totally disconnected, in a sense, that means there's something else in my life that's important other than Hashem, and that's klipa. So therefore, we have to discipline ourselves that even the desires we have for Gashmias should not be in a way that it's so intense that I'm indulging, that I'm so passionate that I can't live without it. Then you know that I've gone overboard. And that's the end of klipa.
It's also not Avera, no? It's like, so is that not Avera or different opinions? Because it makes, it's not, an Avera is cutting yourself off from Hashem.
Right, so it's when you say the word Aveir, it means you actually there's a list of mitzvahs
I got
and
it.
you're actually violating. It's
Okay,
not black and white like
because-
that.
okay.
Yep. Okay, so all this was to show how the klipa, which comes from chesed, which is love and desire and lust for certain things, it's all coming from amalek, coming from yeshus. Because without that, it would be much more contained, much more limited, and much more disciplined, and it wouldn't lead to these negative things. Okay, we continue. A good Shabbos, everybody.
Thanks so much.